Hi, welcome back. We're reading through the Bible, and today we are finishing up the book of Proverbs, which means we're in Proverbs 31. I'm reading from the New King James translation, and I'm using this John MacArthur Study Bible. I always link it in the description below if you're interested in getting one for yourself. Let's get started. The words of King Lemuel's mother is the header on this one. So it's not the dad talking to the son. The words of King Lemuel, the utterance which his mother taught him. What, my son, and what son of my womb, and what son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, nor your ways to that which destroy kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink, lest they drink and forget the law, and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to those who are bitter of heart. And let him drink, and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more. Open your mouth for the speechless, in the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. Those were verses 1 through 9. I want to take a look at the notes on that. The godly king is addressed and told that his reign should be characterized by holiness, sobriety, compassion. This section is filled with succinct and solemn warnings against vices to which kings are particularly susceptible: immorality, overindulgence, unrighteous rule, and indifference to those in need. Those are beautiful, wise words from his mom. In verse 2, referring to my son, the phrase is repeated 3 times to indicate the serious passion of a mother's heart. Like Hannah, she had dedicated her child to the Lord. And in verse 3, it says, do not give your strength to women. Multiplying foreign wives destroys a king as it did Solomon. They would marry foreigners to gain more power over those countries, but she's saying don't do it. Intoxicating drinks can weaken reason and judgment, loosen convictions, and pervert the heart. So very true. They do not suit rulers who need to be clear-headed and steady-minded, using keen judgment. The virtuous wife. Verse 10. Who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flask and willingly works with her hands. She is like the merchant ships, and she brings her food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. She considers a field and buys it. From her profits she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is good, and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hand holds the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. Now, red clothing and dye was more expensive, and she had him covered. Verse 22, she makes tapestry for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple is a color of royalty. Her husband is known in the gates. When he sits among the elders of the land, she makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies sashes for the merchants. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and her tongue is the law of kindness. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Now, one of the most thoughtful and kind friends I have said, can you imagine if everybody chose their spouse or their wife based off of somebody who fears the Lord? It would be world changing, right? Well, let's look at the notes. Verse 10, she does exist, but she's very hard to find. She is excellent and virtuous. In verse 11, it says, safely trust her. He does not maintain jealous guard over her or keep his valuables locked up so that she cannot access them, as was a common ancient practice in a house of distrust. That doesn't sound like a very good marriage, does it? She demonstrates impeccable loyalty to her husband, and her thrift and industry will add to his wealth. So they share everything. Okay. In verses 13 through 24, it says this section describes her behavior. And then in verse 13, where it's talking about wool and flask, it says excellent women gathered the material for making clothes. And verse 14, the note says excellent women would go far to secure the best food for their families. So it's not always the easiest thing that we go for. She would go far and wide to find the best food for her family. Verse 15, in order to have the food prepared for the family each day, she had to rise before dawn to begin the work, which she would do gladly. In our society where everything is fast and convenient, this seems mind-boggling, right? But she would do it, and she would do it gladly, joyfully. She was resourceful and entrepreneurial in her investing and reinvesting. And that's about verse 16 when she considers a field. It sounds like her husband trusts her to just do it. Verse 17, such women were not soft, but by virtue of rigorous work, they were strong. Remember, they didn't have gyms because they didn't need them. Doing life every day was hard. There's a book called The Comfort Crisis. It is not a Christian book. There is language in it, but it so perfectly describes how we seek out temperature control environments, convenience, comfort way too often. And if we're not challenging ourselves every day, we're going to go soft on all categories. And this says they were not soft. They were strong, hardworking women, taking care of the home and being entrepreneurial. Verse 18, merchandise is good. That which she produced for the family of clothing, food, and wealth was good and profitable. The lamp at night. Lamp is to be understood literally. She planted the vineyard during the day and wove late at night. She rose early before the dawn to prepare the food, thus keeping a before sunrise to after dark schedule to care for her household, which was the foremost priority of her life. This was her ministry. And in Titus chapter 2, you could read Proverbs 31 and Titus 2 kind of go hand in hand with a godly woman. Okay, verse 19. These tools are used to turn wool into thread for making clothing. And verses 20 through 24. Her activities, driven by the priority of caring for her family, resulted in multiplied fruitfulness for the poor and the needy, her own household, herself, her husband, and the merchants. It sounds like she is extremely productive. Do you think she's always all things at all times, or do you think there's seasons of doing some things better than others? Drop a comment below and let me know. As far as snow goes, in verse 21, snow indicates the cold that occurs in the high altitudes of Israel. Israel has 8 or 9 different climates in a small country the size of New Jersey. So it's pretty amazing. I've never been. I'd love to go someday. Snow indicates the cold that occurs in the high altitudes of Israel. Her labors anticipated her family's need for warm clothing in such cold places and seasons. Now, back to the linens and the colors of the clothes. The efforts she made to honor others are rewarded to her. These silk and purple garments are expensive evidences of the blessings returned to her by God's grace. Verse 23, known in the gates. This woman made a significant contribution to her husband's position in the community and to his success. His domestic comfort promoted his advancement in public honor. A man's good reputation begins with his home, and thus the virtue of his wife. And verse 24, with all her other responsibilities faithfully discharged, she took time to make items of clothing for the purposes of trade. It's like Etsy before Etsy. Let's see here. Strength and honor. These words describe the character of a woman who fears the Lord. Her inward clothing displays divine wisdom, giving her confidence to face the future with its unexpected challenges. She opens her mouth, law of kindness. Her teaching of wisdom and the law is tempered with mercy in verse 26. Verse 27, she was a skilled manager of the home. And then bread of idleness, eyes looking everywhere, as in the lazy man of whom the same root word is used. Okay, verse 28, her children rise up and call her blessed. She was greatly respected because she has earned the praise of her family. There can be no higher joy for a mother than her children to grow up to praise her as the source of the wisdom that made them godly. And lastly, 29 through 31. This was her husband's superlative praise, which was well deserved, very well deserved, in which he used the same word for excellent, found in verse 10. This portion summarizes her spiritual life. Charm and beauty, true holiness and virtue command permanent respect and affection, far more than charm and beauty of face and form. A woman who fears the Lord. The notes on that says, Proverbs ends where it began, with a reference to the fear of the Lord. Again, anytime you see the fear of the Lord in the Bible, you can highlight it. It's a great reminder. And while she receives material reward, the praise and success she labored to bring to her family and community will be her praise. The result of all her efforts is her best eulogy. And that is the end of Proverbs 31 and the end of the book of Proverbs. How did you do? Did you read it out loud? Did you highlight anything? Do any of these Bible verses challenge you? Feel free to drop a comment below, and I will see you tomorrow for the beginning of a new book of the Bible.